Sure, mate. So we've got a really good show for you coming up this morning. We have AFL Round 10. That included the match last night between Geelong and Port Adelaide, which was an absolute thriller of a match, went down to 2 points. Then we also have Roland Garros as the French Open begins this Sunday evening, I believe.
Yep.
And we also have the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indy 500 and some more news from the NBA playoffs. So it's a massive weekend of sport that we've got to cover here. So it's going to be a pretty intense hour. I'm really looking forward to it. And we're going to start off with Geelong versus Port Adelaide from last night. What were your thoughts on that match, Victor?
Yeah, well, I'm excited because on the Friday show we don't often get to review games. It's more of a preview, but because of the Thursday night fixture, I thought it was an absolute cracking game. It was tight, contested footy all night. I think we saw that Port probably, even though they lost, are the real deal. And can challenge for the finals.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll just go through the match statistics pretty quickly. So Geelong, the final score was Geelong got up 81-79. Patrick Dangerfield and Robbie Gray kicked 3 each. Selwood had 33 and Duncan had 31. And for Port Adelaide, Ollie Wines had 31 touches. Jared Pollock had 29. And I think the main talking issue to come out of this game was Charlie Dixon with, not that long left in the match, only a minute or two. He really used up all his 30 seconds and had no real awareness of the situation, and it potentially could have cost Port the match. What are your thoughts on that one? Do you think they were a bit too harsh on him?
Well, I watched the replay and I counted back, and it was exactly 30 seconds. And I think usually you could get away with 31, 32, 33 seconds from the umpire, but the fact was he hadn't even begun his run-up to kick a goal, and I think that was why he was called play on. And it was just shocking awareness late in the game, had the chance to put him 2 goals up, and all he needed to be doing was a few steps away from his kick, and they wouldn't have called, the play on if they could. But he's just standing up on his mark. He's not even started his run-up.
Yeah.
And then obviously cats came from all angles.
I think that was pretty poor awareness, you're right, by Charlie Dixon. And as much as it was poor awareness by him, it was really good from the Geelong players. At the moment it went on 30 seconds, they were straight in him. They gave him his 5 minutes or whatever the exclusion zone is. And then right after that, they were straight on him, didn't give him a chance to really use the ball efficiently.
Yep.
I think you're right, though. I mean, the fact that, there's not that long in the game and he takes his time to walk back to his mark, he really should be getting straight back to his mark. Then he sets himself and he can take all the time in his world once he starts his run-up.
I think quickly, Port really missed Chad Wingard last night. I think they needed some cleanness in the midfield, and this year's averaging 22 touches a game, which is 7 more than last year. So that was big, and obviously Selwood and Dangerfield, there's always talk that Geelong rely on them too much, but when they get the job done consistently, it doesn't matter if they rely on them, as long as they're not going to get injured. They're going to keep winning them games.
I think, and you see blokes like Duncan as well. He had a really good match last night, and so I don't think they're over reliant. I do think they rely on him quite a lot.
Yeah.
But last night also proved, I think, how good Geelong aren't going to be at home this year. And as that new development, there's more fans in the ground. Yeah. I think they're going to be a real tough beat now at Skilled.
That narrow ground. Both teams couldn't switch the ball all night. I think I counted 5 out on the fulls in the first quarter.
Yeah.
With just that no team could switch it, and that tight contested footy always seems to suit Geelong down there with the roaring crowd.
I think so. I think at home now they're going to be a real force as they have been for so long. And that brings us on to our next match, which is tonight actually, and it is the Bulldogs who are playing St Kilda.
No, it's actually Hawthorn Sydney tonight.
Hawthorn Sydney. My mistake. Sydney have dropped Cunningham and Ollie Florent is going to be in, and Hawthorn have dropped Will Langford. Is that a surprise move, do you think, there, or what do you think's going on there with Hawthorn?
I think with Langford, he's been a fringe player. He had that unbelievable 2014 final series where he could have almost been the Norm Smith, kicking 3 goals, but I think his ball use is just not up to scratch, and that's why we've actually got 2 debutants this week, which is pretty exciting. I think James Cousins is one to look for. He's averaging 24 touches and 6 tackles in the VFL, so that's a good story. He's been elevated off the rookie list. But yeah, I think it should be a great game tonight. Huge rivalry, I think. They've played each other in 4 finals in the last 6 years, so and both clubs will be just looking to salvage the season.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Tom Mitchell's coming off a massive match last week. He had his 50 possession game, and there's been a lot of conjecture about him about how good a 50 possession game he actually had. Do you think there's going to be a lot more attention in played by Sydney tonight, or do you think they're just going to kind of leave him and just sort of not really worry too much about him?
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting. He's playing against his old club, but I'm always under the opinion that you don't tag. He's an inside midfielder, so he gets the ball and he gives an instinctive handball out to players around him, and that's why I don't think you tag him. I think you tag the outside players like an Isaac Smith or someone who's more damaging with the ball, because if someone's winning their own contested footy, they can't be stopped necessarily with a tagger. And I think the problem with Tom Mitchell's game is he doesn't have as good players around him in the midfield. So he's getting the ball out, but Hawks weren't, on the outside aren't that good anymore. So that's sort of, 50 possessions in a team with other elite midfielders around you would have been, a prolific match-winning game. But I think that's why it got talked about as well.
I think so, yeah. I think to have that many possessions in a losing game, I'm not sure, does that say more about him or does that say more about the players around him?
Yeah, exactly.
And also, what are we thinking about Lance Franklin? There's a couple of key Hawthorn defenders out this week. Are they going to have struggle taming him? And if so, is he going to be a potential match winner?
Yeah, well, I think any key, even the best defenders in the comp will always struggle against Buddy Franklin. So I think, especially in Indigenous round, he could totally fire tonight, which is exciting. Sure. And just to note as well, I think it's good that Sean Burgoyne and actually 10 other players have all changed their numbers to. He's changed his number to 67.
Yep.
Which is really good to see. But yeah, I think this should be a good game. A lot closer than I think, but I think Sydney at home will probably be far too strong.
We constantly see how good Sydney are at the SCG. So I think in that one, and I think Franklin's going to be much more of an influence than probably what Hawthorn are hoping for. And that brings us actually onto the next match, which I jumped the gun a little bit earlier with before, and that is the Doggies who are taking on St Kilda at Etihad tomorrow. On Saturday afternoon. And the Bulldogs have dropped Cloak and Redpath for Jake Stringer. He's going to be coming back in. Saints have recalled Luke Dunstan. The Doggies, they've been good, but they haven't been probably great. They've been looking a lot better. They have been looking better, and then they've sort of cost themselves games. St Kilda, they're in real good form. The last week was a bit of an off, but they've won 3 in a row before that. And I think St Kilda are probably a better team than what we thought they were going to be at the start of the year, and the Doggies aren't the team that we thought they were going to be, and now they're pretty much even on the ladder. Where do you see this one going? Who do you think's got the upper hand in this one? Yeah,
I think you're exactly right. It'll be a cracking game. Both teams have been fairly inconsistent this year. I think Dogs have, last year they didn't score a lot, but this year, over the last 4 games, they've only averaged 73 points, which is, they're struggling to score, and then you see them drop Cloak, who's a key forward, and Beveridge is actually, he loves dropping players and putting everyone on notice, and this year he's already dropped 8 grand final players from last year, which is massive. I think it will be a close game. Saints, if they can crack it open and get away from that contested tackling footy that the Dogs love, they might be able to get the win. But I think Dogs, this could be a game where they sort of try and turn their form around and get back on the winners list. I think it just shows how close this year is, just like last year. I think last year the ladder looked similar after 9 games, with both the grand final playing teams 4th and 5th on the ladder. So I think Dogs did that well last year, getting right at the right time of the year. So not too worried about where they're sitting at the moment, with a few close losses. But I think they will get the win at this game. Yeah,
I think St Kilda are actually not too bad defensively. But the thing is, the Doggies, they've just been so inaccurate in front of goal, and they'd be hoping that, Etihad's, it's a real, it's almost a sterile condition for kicking in front of goals.
Yeah, exactly.
You hope they can kick straight tonight. On Saturday. And, if St Kilda pull this one off, then I think we know that they're a proper finals contender.
And they could well win as well, I think. This round is full of these games where it's sort of, you feel it could really show where teams sit and how well they're travelling. And noted that Stuart Crameri is ruled out for the year with a hip injury, which is a sort of a pretty big loss in the end for the Doggies. So, but I think they'll win against the Saints and get get back on the winners list.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, you're right with Stuart Curry and that they're having a lot of changes with their big men. But I still think that the Doggies are probably just good enough to take this one out. St Kilda, though, I can see them giving them a real run for their money well into the fourth quarter, I would say.
If they stop the Doggies' tackle pressure and break it open a bit and score freely against the Dogs, who don't typically score big scores, I think that's how they might win. Next game, Melbourne versus Gold Coast at Alice Springs.
In Alice Springs, yeah. Now, this is going to be interesting for Gold Coast, I think, because they had the bye last week, coming off a pretty tough fixture in Beijing, in Shanghai, where it was also like 30 degrees as well. So they're going to be playing. They're playing in some difficult conditions, Gold Coast, whereas Melbourne, they've been looking really good in patches this year, and then other weeks they've sort of been a bit off. But
yeah,
I mean, do you think that the bye is going to be a big advantage here for Melbourne, or for Gold Coast, or do you see that just Melbourne are just too strong for this one?
Well, I think it's always hard to tell with the buys because sometimes a week off, you don't have that continuity, and that can sometimes do you a disfavour almost. But I think the story of Melbourne's season has been having a good win against someone where they don't go in as favourites, then they go in as favourites and lose, and it's just sort of repeated for the year. So I think they really need to win this game to sort of get this win that they should win, and they're not going to play finals if they don't beat the teams below them. A big out as well for Gold Coast is Gary Ablett.
That's huge. He's done his shoulder again, so he's had a bit of trouble with that in the past. And that's going to be a real test for these young Gold Coast players because they look to Gary Ablett every week and they rely on him a lot, I would say. They rely on him. I'm not sure if they would over-rely on him. I'd almost say they would. And to see whether they sort of can hold it together.
Exactly.
When he's not there, they need his leadership. They need his kind of presence in the midfield. If he isn't there, are they sort of just going to fall apart a little bit and crumble, or are they going to be able to hold off a very intense Melbourne team around the ball?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, they do get a bit of class with David Swallow and Piers Hanley coming back into the side. But I mean, Gary Ablett's he's had a couple of good games this year, but he's not as prolific as he once was. I think they do need him, but whether they rely on him as much as they used to, I think he's a huge loss. But I think that Melbourne have got to win this if they want to show that they're the real deal, and I think they will as well.
I think they will as well. I mean, I think Melbourne just far too good a team for the Suns. The Suns have had some good wins this year, but overall, I think they're not the greatest of teams.
Yeah, big win early against Hawthorn down in Tassie. So they've had a few good signs, but yeah, we don't know. I think Tom Lynch was held goalless last week, so he needs a big game, as he's one of the most promising key forwards in the competition. So let's hope he can bounce back. But I think Melbourne in Alice Springs will get the win.
Yeah, for sure. And Will Brody's going to debut in this one as well. So we're seeing a lot of debutants in the last 3 or 4 weeks. And that brings us on to the dream time at the G match. Richmond taking on Essendon. There's a couple of changes this week. Richmond are bringing in Josh Caddy. Essendon are dropping Leuenberger, I think, for illness. And they're bringing in Tom Bellchambers. So Richmond, I mean, they've well and truly off the boilerplate after how good they were, winning 5 in a row. They've lost now 4 in a row. Has the Tiggy train derailed?
I wouldn't say that. I think they've had 2 close losses against 2 pretty, GWS, who we know they're a strong side, and Fremantle have had a very good year so far. So those 2 close losses aren't the worst in the world. But I do think, they need to show something this Saturday night.
I think in particularly their leaders. I mean, there's 2 weeks in a row where they've gone really tight and they've lost really tight. I think that reflects not so well on their leadership, that they haven't been able to organise and set up their structures the way they would. And this is going to be a big test, I think, for the Richmond Footy Club as a whole this week, because they need to come and they honestly probably need to win. Because if they drop this one, whether it's close, whether it's by a lot, everyone's just going to say, well, they were pretenders, weren't they?
Five losses in a row is something that's hard to come back from.
I don't think any teams that are serious about making finals, serious about playing finals footy, lose 5 in a row at any point.
Sorry.
So I mean, like for Richmond, this is huge for them. I would say.
And what actually excites me most about this game is going to see 2. Because it's obviously the dream time at the GC, 2 excitement package Indigenous players, Dan Rioli and Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody, playing against each other for opposite teams. I mean, they both come from the Tiwi Islands, which is off the coast of Darwin, which is a tiny little community, but it's renowned for producing some of the
footballers.
some of the best Indigenous players the game's ever seen. I think I was reading there's been three Norm Smith medalists come from the Tiwi Islands.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, so I think that's great for the game, and it's going to be a great spectacle because they're both excitement machines, and they're great young players. So that'll be really exciting to see.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. That's a really interesting kind of thing to think about, that there's such a small island can produce such good quality footballers
consistently as well. So
yeah, and we get to see them on probably what is their biggest stage for the year, I would say.
Yep.
So I mean, Essendon, they've been okay this year. They've had some good wins, had some poor losses as well. I'm going to go with Richmond in this one. I know it's a bit of a brave thing to tip Richmond, especially in the last few weeks, but I think that they're going to need to bounce back, and I think this is their best week to do it on a big stage.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you on that one. I think Alex Ransworth, Joe Danaher will be a sort of a classic Joe Danaher's that almost the informed forward of the competition and touted as being probably the next Buddy Franklin almost. But if Alex Rance can stop Joe Danaher or Danaher doesn't kick straight, which we've seen before, I think Richmond are going to win. But I'm really looking forward to that matchup as well.
Yeah, and so we're going to go to a song now and come back and preview the last 4 matches of the round. But what have we got coming up now, mate?
We've got Islands with No You Don't. You're on the Sports Desk on SYN 90.7.
Good morning and welcome back to the Sports Desk on SYN 90.7 FM. That was Islands, and we're going to continue our preview of round 10 of the AFL with the next Saturday night game, which is Adelaide taking on Freo from the Adelaide Oval. Adelaide, a little bit of a blip a couple of weeks ago, lost 2 in a row, came back into form with a big 80-point win over the Lions. Freo, they've been actually tracking very well. They've won some really tight games. They've won actually their 4 out of their last 5. But, we know how good Adelaide are at the Adelaide Oval, don't we, Victor? So do you think Adelaide are going to be too strong in this one? Or can you see Freo pulling off a rather big upset?
I can't see it happening. I can almost see sort of Freo maybe brought down back to earth a bit in this game. I think, I mean, they are in my eyes, the surprise packet of the year. 6 wins from their last 7 is just great form line. But I think no Sandilands this week will really hurt Fremantle.
Yeah, I think that's going to be huge. Sam Jacobs dominated last week. And I can see him doing it again this week as well if there's no real competition for him.
Yeah, well, Sandilands just he just gets, Freo have actually got a really good midfield with Fife and Lockie Neal and Mundy in good form, and he just gives them first use with, he's so good at getting those hit-outs to advantage. So I think that'll hurt, and especially with, Big Sauce Jacobs in good form. The question for me is, I don't know whether Freo, do they tag Rory Sloane? I think they should.
I think considering how well Melbourne did it a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and North Melbourne the week before.
Yeah, so. I think there's a real good case there for tagging Rory Sloane. Other thing I'm quite interested to see is we know how good Adelaide are at scoring. They love to score. The Dockers, after their first 2 games of the season, they've gone 6-1, and in that time they've only averaged 77 points against in the last 7 weeks, whereas Adelaide are averaging 122 points scored. So this is going to be a real interesting kind of game of defence versus attack, because also Freo are a poor scoring team. They only can score an average of 80 points a game. So can you realistically see them holding Adelaide to a score of less than 80?
I can't. I mean, we know that Ross Lyons always played that sort of defensive brand of footy, and it's been sort of questioned that it's not the right brand that'll ever take you to a premiership. I think Freo are good at it against some of the weaker sides, but against such a potent forward line in Adelaide, I think they could sort of break the shackles here. And Josh Jenkins back into the side after being dropped last week.
Yeah, it gives them even more scoring prowess, doesn't it?
But I think the key will be to have men behind the ball, because Adelaide love to get it out the back and get a run on like that. So if Ross, he's a tactical genius. If he can put maybe even 2 players behind the ball, we've seen that's been successful against Adelaide. Have one, as sort of the backstop right behind everybody.
I think setup is going to be such a key in this one for Fremantle. If they can set it up and they can slow it down to their pace, then they're in with a chance. But if at any point they let Adelaide run free, Adelaide probably only need 1 big quarter to see the game out.
Exactly. I think back to the Indigenous round. It's really good to see the brothers, Stephen and Bradley Hill, who are both lining up in the same team on opposite wings as well. And Brad Hill's been almost the pickup of the year.
Yeah.
He's playing some seriously good footy, and Stephen Hill's a classy player, so I'm excited for that. But I think Adelaide will get the job done at home.
Yeah, I think Adelaide will. I wouldn't be surprised seeing Fremantle be able to hold on and close it down for a couple of quarters. And, I can see Adelaide scoring, 5 or 6, 7, 8 goals in a quarter and just taking it away from him in that. And then apart from that, Fremantle actually probably being able to match him at somewhat. And that brings us on to the Sunday games. And the first one is my boys Brisbane. I'm finally going to be able to go watch them play. They're taking on Collingwood at the G. And they've got both the extended benches, which are including Broomhead and Scharenberg for Collingwood. Who are in for James Aish, former Brisbane player. I think he's got an injury to his cheek. Brisbane on their extended bench have Tom Cutler, Daniel McStay, and others, all named so far. And, I mean, we talk about this every week, and I'm sure people are sick of hearing about it, and especially the man himself would be sick about hearing about it. But Nathan Buckley, he comes back from... He almost was out of a job first quarter at quarter time last week. He gets the win. Unconvincing in some ways. He now goes up against Brisbane. We say this every week. If he loses this, the pressure's all back on him, isn't it? I mean, he got a week of respite, but it's all going to be back on him if they don't get the job done against Brisbane, isn't it?
Exactly. Well, I just can't see Collingwood dropping this one. I think they need to win this game, and they need to win it comfortably, get some percentage back, and keep their season alive. And I know you're going, but a little statistic that might have you not so excited was the Lions have lost their past 8 games by an average of 50 points.
Yeah, we can't hold a defence down at the moment.
Well, you're a young side and you sort of get blown out after half time. So I think, Pies, if they're serious, they need to take Lions to the sword here. And I'd love to see Darcy Moore really sort of stamp himself on this game.
I think that's actually a really good point, that this could be Darcy's more opportunity to show that he really is their way forward.
Yeah, against a weaker side, and I think Collingwood's midfield will run rampant all over Brisbane, and he'll get a lot of supply. Dane Beams, obviously captain at Brisbane, coming against his old club in the midfield. But I
think there's going to be a huge amount of work for him to do as well.
Yeah, I don't think he can, with side bottom, Pendles and Treloar.
Hoskin Elliott as well.
Exactly. So
he's going to have to come, and Pendles. He's going to have to pretty much single-handedly carry Brisbane in this one. Collingwood have also won 5 of their past 6 matches against Brisbane, and the only one that they've lost was actually at the G in 2014, which was where Brisbane kind of got a real surprise. I think it was a 50 or a 60-point win in similar sort of circumstances to what we're going to be coming up on Sunday. But I do remember that night Collingwood lost a lot of players to injury, and Brisbane kind of just took it away from there. I can't really see that happening again this week.
Yeah.
I can see blokes also, like you said about Darcy Moore, was kind of stamp his authority. Jeremy Howe's been in amazing form this year. This is another game where, players like him just need to step up, dominate, and kind of show that they really are quality players.
Exactly.
So I'm going to go Collingwood by... I'm going to give him 6 goals. I think Brisbane, we can hold on to him at some point, so I'm going to go 6 goals. What about you, mate?
I'm a bit more ruthless. I think Collingwood needed, last week they won, but they only played a half of footy, so I think Bucks and Collingwood, they need to show they can play 4 quarters, and I think this will be 10 goals plus for me.
Yeah, fair enough. And that means that we have 2 more games left on the Sunday afternoon. The first one is Carlton and North Melbourne at Etihad Stadium. Carlton, they've been good in patches. We say this about a lot of teams. They've been good in patches this year. The last 2 weeks, they've really dropped off. North last week got a good win against Melbourne, won by about 14 points, I think it was. But the same with North. I mean, they had that amazing, first quarter against Adelaide. And apart from that, they haven't really been giving much. And, I think we also have to address just quickly as well the talk about Dusty Martin.
Yeah, exactly. Well, North are now going after 2 big fish with... obviously, Josh Kelly and Dusty Martin, they're trying to lure them over, and I think, that'd be a good side if they got both of them. I mean, I'm not sure it's going to happen, but I think that'd be a seriously strong contender next year, and I think it's good. You've got to, if you get rid of all your prize veterans last year, you've got to offer big money to get these players. North isn't that marquee club which attracts big names.
But, I don't think so.
If you throw enough money at them, and if they both come, wouldn't that be amazing for North Melbourne?
Yeah. And for Carlton coming into this match, they're losing both Sam Rowe and Dale Thomas.
I think Sam Rowe out for the year is a huge loss.
I think so. Yeah, he's actually been in amazing form this year. You know.
Yeah, he's a good, holds his own down at a full-back, but I think North with having Big Ben Brown, who's in also scintillating form, 5 goals last week, and
back, didn't he?
Jared Waite, I think that'll sort of be the difference. And I mean, North aren't, they're a bit better than a 3-win side. I think they've lost 3 games by less than a goal. So,
yeah, and their percentage is 95.
Yeah, so they're actually a lot better than just a 3-win side. I think, Carlton have also exceeded expectations this year.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think, without Sam Rowe, I think Big Benny Brown and Jared Waite.
And I think Todd Goldson as well. He absolutely dominated last week. He had 45 hit-outs, 3 goals. So, I think that their big men are going to be too strong for Carlton's.
It'll be interesting to see whether they have to swing Jacob Wiedering back now that Sam Rowe's out. I mean, I think he's a natural forward and a natural defender. I like to see him up forward, but he might have to come back to cover that loss of Sam Rowe. But yeah, I think North will get the job and get 4 wins and have a sneaky chance of maybe playing finals this year.
I think about 3 goals is probably the region that we're talking about in this one, and that means that we have one more game to cover. It's Sunday late. It is West Coast hosting the Giants from Domain Stadium over in Perth. Then the Giants, I mean, they just keep getting better and better, don't they? I mean, they had that a really close win against Collingwood a few weeks ago, and now, they've won 4 of their last 5. West Coast, they travel. I think travel's going to be their massive inhibitor. Luckily, they're playing at home this week, which means that we know how good they are at home. I think. I mean, West Coast, even how good GWS has been, I can't see West Coast dropping this one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, well, they are undefeated at home this year. It's a good game. It's 2nd versus 4th on the ladder. But West Coast, with that Domain Stadium being such a fortress, they can win enough games to get that top 4 spot. The big question is then, can they come and win over in Melbourne in the finals? But GWS, I mean, they're not playing. They've got a few, they've scraped through a few wins, but they're not actually playing that well. I think as well, Stevie J, Leon Cameron said he shouldn't have played him last week, and now this week he's out. I saw on the TV last night he was down at the reunion enjoying a few frothies with the boys for the Geelong Premiership reunion.
Yeah, I think he's more than deserving of that. But there he joins their growing injury list, which is going to become a real concern, as you said, for Leon Cameron.
And Rory Lobb, is out, and I think they've only got about 26 players to now choose from, the Giants.
I mean, they've got they're debuting Isaac Cumming and Dawson Simpson. So that shows that, they're throwing more debutants into the mix. West Coast, on the other hand, are bringing in Drew Petrie for Sharad Wellingham. Then there's a few more on the extended bench. But I'm going to stick with what I said earlier. I think West Coast in this one. GWS will probably give them a good run for their money. This is a sneaky outside game of the round, by the way. It's a low-key game of the round. And what are your thoughts for this one, mate?
Well, West Coast have never lost to GWS. And I think Josh Kelly, as we mentioned before, he keeps showing us why he's worth that massive pay packet, averaging 28 touches. And I'm gonna go with the outsider. I think GWS can beat them with a bit of run and speed. So that's going to be my outside tip.
Versus fair enough. That's going to be, as I said before, that's going to be a really interesting match, one that I'm really going to watch closely on that one. But we're going to go to a song now, and when we come back, we're going to be talking the French Open, which starts this weekend. How good's that?
Yeah, exactly. Bit of tennis. All right, you're on SYN 90.7 on the sports desk, and this is Them with Baby Please Don't Go. Tennis now. We've got the French Open coming up. Sam, you're a bit of a guru.
Yeah, I wouldn't say guru. Guru's a bit confident. I think we both know our limitations in the tennis. But so the French Open is going to start on Sunday evening. The winner is going to receive 3.1 million Aussie dollars for both the men's and the ladies.
Jeez, it's a lot of money being a tennis player, isn't it?
There's good money in it, isn't there? So last year, Novak Djokovic beat Andy Murray in 4 sets. Garbine Muguruza defeated Serena Williams in what was an absolute massive of an upset. And the draw takes place tonight at about 8 p.m. And there are a couple of seeded Aussies in there, but the number 1 seed, I think, at the moment is predicted to be Andy Murray, Novak Djokovic, Stan Wawrinka, then Rafael Nadal and Milos Raonic round out the top 5. Dominic Thiem is probably the excitement in there. He's at number 6. And for the ladies, Angelique Kerber is probably going to take the number 1 seed. Karolina Pliskova is going to take 2nd. Simona Halep, Muguruza, and Alina Svitolina are probably going to be the top 5 seeds there. But there's a couple of real strong Aussies in the mix for this one.
Yeah, interesting to note that Nick Kyrgios will go into the tournament not in the top 16.
Yeah, not in the top 16 and not in the best of form. He lost second round in Lyon. Thanasi Kokkinakis also lost first round in Lyon as he makes his return after missing out on the Aussie Open. And then we also have Bernard Tomic. He's hasn't had the greatest of records at Roland Garros, making it past the second round. So three major hopes aren't looking the greatest, but, you know, I mean, we never know about majors, you know.
Yeah, exactly. The majors are one that can be sort of, anyone can come up from the bottom. And
yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, we know how much Kyrgios loves a bit of a big stage as well, don't we? He loves a bit of attention, a bit of a big stage, and this is kind of his thing. And those three are going to be joined by Jordan Thompson, John Millman, and wildcard Alex de Minaur, who will also be competing, making it 6 men Aussies in the
That's a lot. That's
men's
good.
draw. Yeah, that is really good. That's strong. And then on the women's side, we have Sam Stosur and Daria Gavrilova, who will both be seeded, and they're probably going to be our strongest chances. And as you said before, they're in Strasbourg, aren't they?
Yeah, well, they're a chance to play an all-Aussie final in Strasbourg. They've both advanced to the semis, which is exciting prospect and showing good form leading into the major, which is exciting.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And they're both going to be joined by Victorian Jamie Foulis, who I think might even be an RMIT, I'm not sure. But she kind of skyrocketed. She made the Australian Open main draw, which was very impressive. She's only a teenager. And she's going to be joined by Ash Barty and Alija Tomljanovic, who I think that's how you spell. I think that's how you say it. That's a bit of a tongue twister. So the women are also going to have 5 in their main draw, which is very strong for Aussie tennis, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Ash Barty, she was very good in the Oz Open. I think I remember she performed pretty well in the Oz Open.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're seeing now is our main hope, I think, is going to be as much Sammy Stosur as it is going to be Gavrilova. Her rise has been really incredible over the last year and a half, I'd say. But that now brings us on to kind of the discussion about the main players for this tournament. You know, Rafael.
Can anyone beat Rafael Nadal?
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, he's going to be looking to win his 10th French Open, but he hasn't won one since 2014. So he's he hasn't been quite as strong as what he's been hampered by a bit by injury and, you know, a couple of losses. He lost to Djokovic last year, I believe, or the year before. So, but I mean, he's going to be going for his 10th French Open and his 30th Masters title. So
he's just so strong on clay. I think, although his 17-game winning streak on the clay was just recently ended by Dominic Thiem. I'm not sure if I pronounced that right.
Yep, Dominic Thiem, who as I said before, is 6th seeded, and he is super on clay. Absolutely super on clay. So I don't think there's any sort of... I don't think Nadal will be too concerned by losing to Thiem. And that also comes with Novak Djokovic, who is the reigning champion, and he's made the semis and the quarters respectively at Madrid and Monte Carlo in the lead up. However, clay is... I've written down worst in my notes, but I think it's a bit harsh to call it his worst surface. I'd say it's probably his weakest surface. You know, Djokovic, he does love a good slide. Yep. He does love a good slide, but he plays a lot more of a faster brand of tennis as opposed to Nadal, who's like a bit more of a fan of playing a match, kind of grinding it out. And clay is such a slow service that it doesn't always favour Djokovic.
And Novak's got a new coach as well.
Yes, he has. Yeah, Andre Agassi. So he split ways with his coach after that kind of terrible Aussie Open, where I think it was the second round.
Yeah,
I remember working and just seeing, and just the whole players kind of was in a awkward shock silence when we saw that he lost. I think it was the second round. So he parted ways with his coach, signed a sponsorship deal with Lacoste. So he's going to be looking in kind of a new man after dropping the Uniqlo. And then we have Andy Murray, who was the runner-up last year, but his form has been very mediocre in his run-up to this French Open. We're actually saying that about a lot of players. Stan Wawrinka, he won in 2015. He's going to be seeded in the top 5, and he's won actually a major every year since he made his debut win at the Aussie Open in 2014.
That's impressive.
It is very impressive.
I like his style of play as well.
Yeah, it is great to watch, isn't it? And he's going to be flying the Swiss flag, obviously, because Roger Federer isn't competing at this
massive
out. Yeah, which is I think it makes sense, because I was thinking about this last night that he's 35, I believe it is now. He's only probably got a handful of majors in him left, and if Clay's in his best chance of winning, I mean, I think Wimbledon, he's been so strong at. I think everything else apart from clay, he's been historically so good and strong at, especially Wimbledon, which is next coming up. So it probably makes sense to forfeit a tournament here to give himself the best chance of winning, and maybe another.
I mean, like it at that age as well. You can't play unlimited tennis when when your body gets a bit on. So smart move.
And I'd love to see another romance like what he had at the Aussie Open, because that was absolutely amazing.
Great?
That was absolutely amazing, man. I was almost in tears watching that because that was so good. And I don't think anyone in the tennis world would want to deny him another shot at being able to do that. And so that's closes out our men's draw. In terms of the women's side of the draw, Garbine Muguruza, she's the defending champion, but also her run-up has been hampered by injury and form. Angelique Kerber, she's the current world number one. She's probably going to be seeded number one, but she hasn't got a good record at Roland Garros. Her best effort was quarters 5 years ago in 2012. So, we always talk about this, that the women's draw is always so wide open, and it brings in a couple of other different names as well, including Elena Svitolina. She won the Italian Open, beating Simona Halep. So she's only 22. She's the Ukrainian. She's very young. She could be looking as a bit of an outside chance here. And Simona Halep herself was runner-up in 2014. She's quite hard-hitting. She's quite an aggressive style player, and she's the early favourite for this one, because we're not actually too sure about who can actually win this from the women's draw, because they're missing. It's
probably good for the Aussies if it's open.
I think so, yeah. I mean, that talks really well, not only for Stosur and Gavrilova, but, the youngsters like Foulis as well. It's probably a weaker draw, and that gives them an opportunity. I mean, like, she gets a third, fourth round. That's going to be absolutely amazing for her development. And the other thing is that the women's draw is weakened because of the fact that 4 former female champions in Serena Williams, Lena, Maria Sharapova, and Francesca Schiavone all aren't competing.
Yeah, well, Sharapova didn't get the wild card. So she
didn't get the wild card, and the other 3 are all, I think, some sort of injury, except for Williams, who was obviously pregnant.
Yeah, after that stirring win with a baby
with a baby, yeah. I mean, that's absolutely amazing, isn't it? So that really brings the women's draw a bit wider open, and I'm going to call this early now. Alexander Zverev dominated Novak Djokovic in Rome, beat him, an absolutely superb performance, looked really good early in this year's Aussie Open. I'm going to call him as a sneaky outside chance of making it to the semis.
Not
Alexander Zverev, young German. He's only 19.
Wow, they come on so quickly sometimes. I think for me, Nadal, he's just so good on clay, and even though he's getting old, I'd love to see him have a win.
Yep, I think I'm gonna say Nadal Wawrinka final, and I think Alex Zverev to make the semis with probably Djokovic. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be really interesting to see. We're going to be able to cover that for you for the next 2 weeks. I'm going to really enjoy doing that. And before we go to a final song and then the NBA, which I know you're very excited for, aren't you, mate?
Yeah, it's closing up. It's getting
very tight. We're just going to go quickly to motorsport, which we don't give a lot of airtime onto, which kind of hurts me because I'm a massive F1 fan.
Yeah.
But this weekend we've got 2 of the biggest races in motorsport. They make up 2/3 of what's called the Triple Crown of the 3 most famous motorsport races, and that's the Monaco Grand Prix and the Indy 500. So we had the Monaco Grand Prix, which started off with practice last night. Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel have been the 2 title contenders so far. They have won 2 races each this year, and with practice taking place last night, which is odd because it's the only race that has a Thursday practice, Vettel led the way with a 1 minute 12.7.
And was it Dan Ricciardo posting the second fastest time?
Yeah, so that's very exciting. So that's been really good because Red Bull have been kind of off the pace this year. Ricciardo was actually on the podium in Spain, but he was over a minute behind the podium, the Hamilton and Vettel. So, so that Red Bull car isn't anywhere near as strong as what we were probably hoping it for Daniel Ricciardo's sake. But quickly, Vettel's that 1 minute 12 from Vettel was actually the fastest ever lap of the Monaco Grand Prix circuit.
Wow.
So, I mean, we're only going to see times drop from there, which is actually very interesting as a viewer. Mercedes struggled to match Ferrari's pace. They had trouble with their tyres. And there was a bit of a debate about the new installed higher curbs, I think.
Safety issues, was there?
Yeah, safety issues. I was watching it last night. I don't think they'll pose too much of an issue. A couple of drivers were getting a bit melodramatic, as all racing drivers love to do, get a bit melodramatic, saying that it was going to send them into the crowd. I don't think that's going to happen. And the best way to not hit them is to stay off them, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I think that brings us on to also importantly is that Fernando Alonso won't be at this year's Monaco Grand Prix. He's racing at the Indy 500, which is this Sunday, or actually technically Monday morning. He's going to start 5th, which is, funnily enough, his best start in a race in 3 years.
Wow.
So that shows how, how off he's been with his cars and that kind of thing.
Well, he's touted as one of the most talented drivers, and he just can't.
Exactly, yeah.
His team just can't get the car on the track for him.
Yeah, I mean, the McLaren Honda, since they've come back and formed that partnership, have been absolutely terrible. But funnily enough, the McLaren Honda have actually his constructor for the Indy 500, and he's going to start 5th behind pole sitter, who, get this, Victor, average speed. So they do 4 laps of the circuit, of an oval circuit, and they measured your average speed. The pole sitter, Scott Dixon, his average speed was 373 kilometres an hour.
Wow, what is it, a straight line?
It's almost a straight line. They don't brake. I don't think these cars ever brake. An average speed of 373 kilometres an hour. That is absolutely amazing, isn't it?
How'd you go on a lap with him?
Terrified.
Yeah.
And so that's going to round up the weekend in motorsport. Monaco is at 10 p.m. on Sunday. I'm definitely going to be watching. Indy 500 is at 2 a.m. Monday morning. That's going to go on for a little while. And just before we go to a song really quickly, I want to give a quick moment to Nicky Hayden. He was the 2006 MotoGP World Champion, was hit by a car about a week or two ago training in Italy, and he passed away, unfortunately. I believe it was on Monday morning.
Sad.
Yeah, very sad. The Kentucky kid. He such a good driver, such an exciting driver. And he's going to...
everything I read, he was just an amazing person as well.
Absolutely loved in the paddock. So, I mean, that's gonna really rip a bit of a hole through MotoGP's heart, unfortunately. But that'll lead us into our next song, and then the NBA. What have we got coming up for us, Victor?
Yeah, the NBA's almost at the championship game. So Cleveland's playing later today, and they'll look to wrap it up. So we'll come back to that after a song. We've got Bill Withers with Ain't No Sunshine on SYN 90.7.
Ain't No Sunshine, and you're into the last segment now of the Sports Desk on SYN 90.7 FM, and we're talking NBA. Final game of the series coming up this morning in half an hour. Cavs Celtics. Cavs are leading 3-1, aren't they? Victor, take us away.
Yeah, well, Cleveland they held off a scare from Celtics last game. I think LeBron had four fouls early in the game, which was the first time he's ever had 4 fouls in the first half of a game, an NBA game. So that saw him extended periods on the bench, and he couldn't play as aggressively. So the Celtics look good, but obviously Cleveland have 2 other All-Stars in Kevin Love and Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie just dominated. He could drive to the rim, finish on both hands. I think he had 28 points in the third quarter, and he had a record amount of points for a playoff game. So I think Cavs will want to get this done. It's obviously back to Celtics, so they're playing away, and we know that the Celtics have such a loud crowd down there. But I think Cavs will want to, they've got the best team in the comp waiting for them in the championship. So I think they'll want to get it done. Celtics have started to play a little bit differently without their star playmaker and scorer Isaiah Thomas. They've had to share the ball around and play team first offense, lots of cuts, lots of screens. I think it worked, and it was harder to defend, but Cleveland are just too star-studded to be stopped. LeBron obviously goes down with the fouls, and then obviously Kyrie and Kevin Love step up. So
yeah. I mean, so Boston stole a game, didn't they? They stole 1 game in the series so far. What do you think they can possibly do to do that again? Is there any way they can possibly do that again?
They can. They've got to play like they did. They were up at halftime in that game. I think they've got to keep, because they don't have any stars at the moment on their team, so they've got to keep sharing the ball, and I guess got to get a bit lucky. Got to get a bit lucky to beat the Cavs, but I expect the Cavs to win, and the finals are now 1 week from kicking off, and I think it will be Cleveland versus Golden State. Golden State have been, phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Can you get that word for me, Sam?
Cleveland have been Golden State. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Golden State have been phenomenal.
Cheers. That's a tough one for me. I think they've won 27 of their last 28, advanced to their 3rd straight NBA championship, and they're the first team ever, I think, to win their first 12-0.
Yeah.
They haven't lost a playoff game.
Wow, that's it. So going to that finals, I think we're going to be talking a Cavs Golden State final. What do you think? Who do you think is going to be able to take this one out? Where do you think that matchup's going to be won and lost?
I think that Golden State will get it done. They're in such good form. I mean, amazingly, they could potentially clean sweep. I don't think it'll happen, but they could clean sweep the Cleveland Cavaliers and make history of they'd be the best team ever. And they'll be hungry because last year we saw them go down 3-1. They were up 3-1, sorry, and then they got run over at the end. So they'll be hungry. I think their big four have 4 All-Stars: Kevin Durant, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and of course Steph Curry. So I think that'll be a big difference. But and unfortunately there are no Australians left after the Spurs. They took out the Spurs, poor Paddy Mills.
Yeah, unfortunate about that. We're going to follow how the Aussies actually go during their off-season, if there's going to be any moves or anything like that.
His contract's over, so he could play for some big money.
It could be, couldn't it? That would be interesting to see. So we're going to keep following that. We're going to keep following the NBA playoffs as well. So Game 5 is in half an hour, and then if required, I don't believe it will be, Game 6 is on Sunday morning at 10:30 a.m. The finals will start on Thursday night at 9 p.m. local time.
1 week away. I'm pumped.
But very excited, aren't you, Victor? Actually, we'll be talking all about that next week. We'll have a big preview of NBA finals. That wraps up. That wraps up our show.
Yeah,
leads us into a really big weekend of sport, which I'm going to be absolutely excited for.
Non-stop.
I know you're going to be the same, aren't you, Victor?
Yeah, exactly. Always pumped for a big weekend of sport. I think we've got Schools on Air coming in.
We do have Schools on Air coming in very soon, so we've been given a little bit of the hurry up. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back next week on Friday if you want to listen to us too. If you want to listen to the results, you can tune into the Monday morning show at 9 p.m. If you want to hear a bit of politics, tune in Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Yeah, we'll leave you with Kurt Vile with Pretty Pimping. Cheers.